As we embark on our fourth year of broadcasting, Our Voices has discussed countless topics since the first episode that aired in November 2018. In 2021, the show went through a few changes, including 3 new anchors bringing more energy and new perspective to our coverage of issues affecting women and girls. The new hosts who joined me on Our Voices are Ndimyake Mwakalyelye, Amina Aliyu, and Simegnish Yekoye. Despite the challenges, as one of the original hosts of the program, I can assure you that the motivation and commitment to our core audience of women and girls in Africa and in the diaspora is unwavering. COVID-19 was first declared 2 years ago, and here at Our Voices, we are still broadcasting mostly from the safety of our homes, navigating through the new technical innovations and challenges brought forth by the coronavirus pandemic and now the raging Omicron variant. The Our Voice team remains focused on bringing you fresh interviews and stories about the women of our times. Stories such as Nigeria's former finance minister Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala becoming the new World Trade Organization chief, or the South African scientist Angelique Kodzi discovering the Omicron COVID variant. Politically, women are rising to the decision-making tables like Samia Suluhu Hassan, the new president of Tanzania. Also taking you inside Africa's prestigious institutions election like the African Union. Our Voices has also reported on taboo stories about female genital mutilation as well as rape as a weapon of war from an on-the-ground perspective. We will continue our excellent reporting in 2022. Hello, I'm Auriane Itangishaka, and this is Our Voices. As we begin 2022, let's pause for a moment to reflect on some of the important topics we feature on the program over the past year through the eyes of our new hosts. Last year presented opportunities for our Voices team to discuss topics of interest to women and girls in Africa and in the diaspora. In particular, I had the chance to bring you topics such as pregnancy during a pandemic, mother-daughter bonds. While many people are home due to COVID-19, we also look at the benefits and challenges of the excessive use of social media. One memorable interview last year was when I spoke to a Nigerian woman about pregnancy during a pandemic. If you had to choose back then or even now, would you still decide to have a baby despite the pandemic?
Yes, I will, because she gives me lots of joy and she's just been a blessing to us. So I will.
You still have another one?
Yeah.
As 2021 closed in December, I traveled to Kenya and had a chance to meet with affiliates at KTN News in Nairobi. We were ahead in 2019. This time appearing on Africa Speaks, host Ashley Mazuri and I discussed the narrative of Africa in the media. Also, I visited VOA's media partner Kenyatta University TV, where youth have a platform to discuss social and political issues that most affect them. I visited the Luanda Center in Bungoma. At this center, women have the opportunity to support one another emotionally and materially, as well as financially, as they enter a new chapter in life after their husbands have passed away. Now, in 2022, we are planning to give our audience more great stories on women and girls and engage with you on topics that can empower our communities to move society to a better place every day. Happy New Year. It's time for a short break. When we return, we'll hear from the 3 colleagues, Ndimyake Mwakalyelye, Simegnish Yekoye, and Amina Aliyu, as they reflect on their new roles as co-hosts of VOA Our Voices while sharing some of their most memorable moments over the year of 2021. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Our Voices. As we reflect on 2021, and before we hear from the co-host of VOA Our Voices as they share their new experiences, we share with you a new promo featuring the whole team of the new Our Voices. Check it out. On VOA Our Voices, women are using their voices to empower,
to nurture, to educate,
to stand up in any language.
Amajgriyachu,
Dimsachan, Marioyamu,
Mazwiedu,
Our Voices.
Ndimyake Mwakalyelye is no stranger to the VOA television. You may remember her as the lead reporter and co-anchor for Africa 54, VOA's daily television news broadcast for Africa. In addition to her new role as Our Voices co-host, she also serves as the chief of VOA's Zimbabwe service since 2014. In this capacity, she manages broadcasts to Zimbabwe in English, Shona, and Dembele on medium wave and shortwave radio, and a daily live broadcast of its popular Studio 7 radio program. She's particularly interested in topics that addresses the relevant issues of concern to women and children and people of disabilities. We sat down to discuss her joining the Our Voice team. She discussed her views about the coverage of COVID-19 in 2021.
How are you?
Well, happy to have made it in the new year.
Yes, praise God.
Praise God.
Happy New Year, Ndimyake. It's so great to see you in this new year of 2022.
Well, happy new year to you, Auriane.
Now, Ndimyake, we are international women journalists covering a wide range of issues. For you in 2021, what was one issue that you feel and was happy about the media covering very well in 2021?
Thank you so much for that question. Yeah, 2021, I was really happy to see the coverage as it pertains to COVID, because women on the continent really need information. I really think the media did a fantastic job in covering COVID. Of course, it dominated every news headline, every news media stations, because it was the dominant topic. Another angle that I really think was done well was covering how COVID impacted women. You know, in many African countries, women are really the ground workers, you know, farming, selling at the market. And the lockdowns that came with COVID, or trying to stop the spread of COVID, really affected women. Because for one, they could not sell their wares, and then school closures means that all the children were also home. So it disrupted a lot of family life.
Dimi, I recently was with some of our media partners in Kenya and was asked the question about the narrative of Africa being told by international journalists. How do you feel as international journalists we are doing in covering issues on the continent?
It is an amazing time for African journalists to be able to cover Africa. You know, for a long time there was always this, attack on Western journalists. Well, we are kind of now Western journalists, because we are broadcasting out of Washington, D.C. at the Voice of America. So we have a real opportunity to tell the story the way we feel our audience would like to receive it. So I think in terms of us covering the continent at the moment, I want to say that we are doing well, but there is a whole lot more to be done. There's a whole lot more to be done. It will make a lot of impact, especially if we are able to bridge the two continents. We are in the United States, but we are broadcasting to Africa and the countries in Africa. How do we create that bridge so that we also don't become too distant, too detached, and we are covering issues from a perspective where we don't really understand? So I think our connection to the continent, being able to travel, seeing people in the environment. You know, Our Voices team went to several African countries in 2019. That was really impactful, because you get to see the audience, first of all, hear from them what they want. And then our stories resonate with the people we are talking to. So I think in terms of how the international media, and I'll speak for myself specifically and VOA specifically, I think we are scratching the surface, and we know that we've got a challenge, and we are going to rise to it.
And there has also been a push to produce more positive stories on the continent, while there's still also challenging issues that still need coverage?
That's the dilemma, I think. There's still so many wars, there's still so much crisis, but at the same time, there are so many developments along positive lines. When you hear that Africa, comprises among the top fastest growing economies on the continent, you hear Africa is contributing to the fight against coronavirus in the forefront of technology. You hear all these developments in Kenya, in Nigeria. So our challenge is how do you make sure that you don't over-publicize one end and neglect the other?
Ndimyake, you have been with VOA for a while, and you have covered a wide range of issues, as I've said before. You've been on Perspective, you've been on Africa 54, you have a long years of experience as an international broadcaster. So you've recently joined Our Voices. How has that experience been for you in your journey as an international broadcaster, and a female broadcaster at that?
I'm so excited, Auriane, to be part of Our Voices, because it speaks to one issue I really love, which is women. Women need more access to information. Women need a platform where they can feel that it's their show to run. So I'm just so honored that I'm part of this show. And I mean, there are so many stories that I want to get involved in and do. I really love the fact that soon I can get back into my mode of being a video journalist. VJing is my thing, where I want to, it just gives you access to people, sometimes without necessarily having to prep them. People on the street, because there's so many stories out there that sometimes we can't get to, because there's just so much stories but very little time to tell it, so many, so few spaces in which to tell it. So I'm really excited about the fact that we get to focus on specifically women, because that's what has been the difference between Perspectives and Africa 54, and that this show is just about women. So I just need to find a woman and talk to her and talk about her and see what other women have got to say. So yeah, it's exciting.
Many of you may know Simegnish Yekoye as the regular presenter of our Women to Watch segment. Simegnish joined Voice of America in 2021 as a broadcaster in the Amharic service on a show called Gabina, an infotainment youth radio show that broadcasts to Ethiopia and Eritrea. Prior to joining VOA, Simegnish worked as a journalist, media consultant, and translator. She also served as the director of the Ethiopian Environment Journalists Association. An outspoken advocacy of freedom of expression, she has worked with international media to highlight political as well as human rights stories that do not garner much coverage. Simegnish reflects on some of her work over the past year as a new member of the Our Voice team.
Simegnish, Happy New Year. It's so good to see you. How are you?
Happy New Year. So good to be here.
Now, Simegnish, what are some of the stories that stood out for you in 2021, and some of the stories maybe you covered?
As you guess, the conflict in Ethiopia is it took so much of our attention in our coverage in 2021. Really, no one anticipated that the conflict is going to disrupt life for such a long time, but it's a very complex war that affected the whole country. So we have been covering the impact on economy, history, the culture, and the society as a whole. Other than that, COVID and its impact has been much in our coverage, but what stood out for me mostly is, the creativities it brought, especially in front of the technologies. I interviewed and brought a lot of young men and women who created and innovated technologies that make social distance learning easier to go through. One thing to mention also is in 2021, the inauguration of the first Black woman as a vice president of United States was inspiring. And I say that because, a woman of color rising to such power is uplifting for so many girls, not only in the United States, but also around the world.
Now, as you mentioned, of course, war and civil unrest are very unfortunate, and when they happen, a lot of lives are disturbed. Let's take a quick look at a recap of what it was like at the end of the year, just a few days ago in 2021, and then we'll go on.
Political tensions in Ethiopia boiled over in November 2020 between the government of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or TPLF. Tigray forces attacked a federal military base in their northern stronghold and tried to steal the army's weapons, saying they feared an offensive. Prime Minister Abiy struck back, launching what he said would be a quick military offensive against the rebels. But 13 months later, the fighting continues. The rebels have threatened to march on the capital, Addis Ababa, and a de facto government blockade has left more than 5 million people in Tigray in dire need of humanitarian assistance. The conflict has spread to the neighboring Amhara and Afar regions, leaving an additional 4.2 million people in need of aid.
What became clear quickly in the course of the conflict is that there's unlikely to be any definitive military solution. And this has been the case throughout the course of 2021, and I don't see that changing in the future.
The parties have ignored international calls to stop fighting and talk.
Our concern is for a ceasefire that absolutely must happen. Humanitarian aid needs to reach all those that have suffered from this conflict, and we absolutely need to resolve these problems through political discussions and through dialogue.
Now, Simegnish, how did these events in Ethiopia, the country you're from, are affecting women and children especially?
Unfortunately, women have always been a victim of war, and also children too. And this is the case also in the conflict in northern Ethiopia that has been going on for over a year now. Women are subjected to arbitrary killings. They lost their sons, brothers, husbands in this war. And women are also mainly victims as they continue to be subjected to rape, which is used as a weapon of war by all sides involved in the conflict. And the horrific stories that have been coming out and the stories of the continued struggles that come out every day is still on top of my mind, and it's really, really sad. Also, displacement is another thing that women are suffering from in this war. Women are forced to flee their home, their properties, everything they worked hard for, and they flee, to protect their unborn child, their infants, and they continue to live in vulnerable situations in shelters around the country. And you know what makes it more sad is in this war, health and education facilities are targeted and destroyed in this war. And so that makes it difficult for these women to even have access to medical care, and their children also continue to lag behind in their education because they don't have access to school.
Now, looking at the continent as a whole, what are some of the stories should we be focusing on in 2022 in your view?
I would say, given what we have been covering the past year, conflict resolution and, solution for lasting peace should be given a priority in our coverage. Peace and security are essential for every society, for every humankind. So we need to, our stories need to focus on bringing out stories that advocate balanced, peace for every society. In addition to that, the COVID-19 vaccine inequality is another issue that needs to be given attention. Low vaccine distribution in Africa, while a lot of vaccine is being destroyed in the West for lack of use, is really a shame. So we need our stories need to call out vaccine hoarding as we go forward in this new year.
Mm-hmm. Now we're talking about the continent, but also in the diaspora. You are a mother of children in the diaspora, full-time working mom. Do you have any advice for women on the continent, or especially in the diaspora, for 2022?
For diaspora, especially mothers, women, but also mothers, I say, please continue to nurture your connections, your friendships, your social fabric. I say this because we in the diaspora, especially mothers, tend to feel alone, tired, stressed, and we really need each other to support. We need each other to encourage and, even share our imperfections and say, it's okay not to be okay. So I say to diaspora mothers, You could be raising your child, you could be building your career, or you could be just, supporting your family in any means. And but you are doing an amazing job, and you are not alone. We are here to share your stories.
Amina Aliyu is a broadcast journalist with VOA's Hausa service here at the Voice of America in Washington, D.C. She joined the network in November of 2018 and has since been the primary host of the unit's Women's and Youth flagship show, Yuda Gobe, a 30-minute program that airs 5 times a week. Amina is a graduate of the University of Exeter, United Kingdom, with a Bachelor's of Art in Philosophy and Political Economy. She developed a passion for being the voice of the voiceless women, giving a platform for expression and to make them key players rather than spectator in politics, business, science, technology. We began our conversation on the opportunities and challenges of covering women's issues in the diaspora and on the continent.
Amina, Happy New Year. So great to see you in 2022.
Happy New Year, Auriane. So good to see you too.
Amina, I know you work on different women's shows besides Our Voices in the Hausa service. How hard or how easy is it to cover women's topic and reaching a women's audience?
It's not hard to capture the audience, but it's quite difficult to get them to participate. So for example, on Wednesdays, we have a women-only show. And it was created to give women only the opportunity to call, because we find that most of our callers are men, but they still don't call. And even though we know through social media comments, when you meet people, the beauty of working with people on the continent is they approach you directly and they tell you that they listen. So you know that the women are listening and they're benefiting, but they're not participating.
Now, besides the stories of relationship, which always catches young women's attention, what are some of the other stories that we should be looking forward to, or young women and women on the continent in general look forward to in 2022, you think?
I think it would be beneficial to see, say, for example, scholarship programs funded by successful women for other women. Women encouraging other women in their businesses, women tutoring other women for free, or young girls for free, mentoring young girls. So women helping women.
I know you work on a lot of topics that are considered taboo, especially in your community. What are some of the topics that you still see in 2022 as we enter into this year, and maybe even last year in 2021, are still considered taboo but shouldn't be?
I think the one that stands out the most for me is sex education. The fact that conservative communities are still pushing against sex education when this is beneficial and curbing a lot of issues that we have in society. So, for example, it's beneficial for everyone if a mother is able to freely talk to her daughter about how to take care of herself, what her menses means, how to take care of herself when it comes, even if it's just so she's not scared the first time that she sees it. And to understand, say for example, in our culture, it's commonly said, oh, when a man touches you, you're going to get pregnant. And then he touches you, and then you don't get pregnant. And you're like, oh, okay, so maybe it's not so bad. And they're not properly educated about exactly what sex is, and so they find themselves in really, really awkward situations.
Now, what caught your attention in the media in 2021, and is it something that we should be looking for more or covering more in 2022?
So 2021, what caught my attention the most was January 6th, the insurrection here in the United States. Another thing was seeing African countries come together with regards to discovering the Omicron variant of coronavirus and the travel ban that some European countries had placed on the African countries that were reporting cases of the Omicron variant of the coronavirus. So I was really impressed at how African countries came together and stood against that. For example, Nigeria did not have a red list. And then suddenly we had a red list. And the red list had a lot of these countries that had banned other African countries. And, it was a diplomatic way of dealing with the situation and also putting your foot down. So it's really encouraging to see African countries standing together and we get results. I would like to see much more of that in 2022. Finally, another thing that I found really interesting was the collaboration between Fireboy and Ed Sheeran and their new song Peru. So Peru is Fireboy's song, but then Ed Sheeran came on and did a remix. So it's always interesting to see Afrobeats blowing up.
Now, is it surprising for people to look at you as a conservative young woman talking about Afrobeats?
Looks can be deceiving, is what I would say. I do enjoy good music. I definitely grew up on African music, and it's a thing of pride for me to see it thriving so much on the international platform.
Now it's time for another quick break. But first, a question for you, our audience. Which topic or person would you like for us to feature on our Voices in 2022? Please share your views on our social media platforms. We are at VOA Our Voices. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp. Our number is right there on your screen.
Empowerment and humanity towards a better world.
Economic and social progress of every society.
Facts and information from key players rather than spectators in politics, business, science, and technology.
City, rural, educated, or underprivileged. We care and we listen to what matters to you.
Your voices are our voices.
Before we end our program, we would like to spotlight VOA's Africa division with programming highlights from the past year.
Our Voices joins women from across the continent with stories of development and empowerment in politics, business, and culture, with entrepreneurs and innovators, one-on-one interviews, and women to watch.
For there is always light if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
And that's where we end our show this week. On behalf of my colleague and everyone here at Our Voices and Voice of America, I'm Auriane Itangishaka. Thank you for watching and Happy New Year. Stay safe.